I've learned a lot about myself this year. I would really have learned a lot about myself in the last 35 years, but I definitively am somebody that is going to die on their feet. Like, if people came around and they were like, you're going to die unless you say the thing, I have learned that I will just never say the thing. Like, that's it. I'm out. Goodbye, world. I just can't do it. It's like, bye, you're fired. Okay, I accept the consequences. Life's tough. Candace, get a helmet. I cannot just do the thing.
Welcome to another episode of the Be Wise podcast. I am your host, Chris Wright, where we talk politics, entertainment, sports, social media, all the goods, all the goods. So, got my Steelers gear on. This is a Troy Polamalu jersey, but I'm wearing it because we had Monday Night Football tonight. We beat up on the Giants. Last week we beat the Jets, so we knocked New York out the box. We got a tough schedule coming up, though. Going to bye next week, and then we got to play Philly, Kansas City, Washington, and then all of our divisional opponents, Ravens twice, Browns twice, Bengals twice. So although we're 6-2 right now, I don't know what that second half record's going to be. Hopefully out of those 9 games, we can win 5 or 6 of them. Steelers looking pretty good. We are looking really good. I got some rest and relaxation. I went camping. One thing I got to say about camping is that camping is American. It is everything that it means to be an American. When you go camping, so my wife and I, we got a nice RV, and we just go to different campgrounds and do nothing. And what's better than doing nothing? I feel like when you go to the beach, you got to pull out chairs and umbrellas and wash your sand off and all that. When you go camping, man, usually the campgrounds have like different events throughout the day, like bingo. And by the way, one thing I want to say, Black people, this is for Black people. Y'all need to camp more. I'm tired of being the only Black guy on the campground. I might see 1 or 2 others out of thousands of campers. Come on, Black people. Camping is awesome. You can do activities like fishing and playing bingo and getting to know your fellow Americans, but everybody just gets along. People share like booze and kids play. And, my dog even snapped at some kid, got all crazy. And her mother, usually like if you're in the city, people want to sue you, like your dog bit my kid. And this lady was like, don't worry about it. Kids deserve that sometimes. It was kind of funny. But that's the thing I do. I like about camping because, everybody just gets along. You're out there for rest and relaxation. And I just get, really amped up about it. So that's why I just came back from some camping, cooking on the grill, drinking beers, drinking, 11 a.m. in the morning till 11 p.m. at night. Who really cares? Um, so one of the things we're going to talk about today is the emasculation of America, the emasculation and degeneration of the Black community, why so many people have become Black conservatives, and how we basically broke down and we became a matriarch in America. And the patriarch is not only dead, but it's criticized as being a bad thing for America. So we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to get this from Judge Joe Brown, who happened to be a guest on the Candace Owens show. But before I get there, let me say something. I promise. Candace, if you're watching me, I am not grifting off you. You know what a grift is? Basically, it's when you play other people's videos who are more popular than you, who might be a celebrity, who might have 1 million followers. So you spend a lot of your time showing their content so more of their followers follow you. But that's not what I'm doing. Candace, I promise you, I'm going to tag you on this, hashtag you on this. I only show so much Candace because she's like my spirit animal. Like, she thinks like I think. Every time when she's preaching I'm her choir. I'm like, man, like she just nails it. And so I'm going to show a few Candace clips, and I'm going to try not to do this too often. But this last week, man, she's been on fire. As I talked to you guys about before, she talked a lot about the whole Kamala heritage and genealogy thing. And I'm kind of steering away from that because I get it. I get it. Candace, you don't have to tell me any more about that. So this last, so she interviewed Judge Joe Brown, and that guy, if you don't remember Judge Joe Brown, he had the television judge show, and that guy, smart as a whistle. I didn't even look up his age, but he's up there. And he was just dropping facts after facts after facts. But for a lot of people who want to know why do you like Candace so much, um, I'm going to show you like how um, how important she is to me because her trek into conservatism, particularly being a Black conservative, um, I had the same journey. I had the same journey. So so check this out. This is what she says on The Breakfast Club.
Where did all of this begin for Candace Owens?
You know, I feel like I have just a very regular story. Like I said, like I was born in New York, raised in Stamford. There was nothing, particularly that stood out in my childhood that made me think that I was going to go into politics. I feel like I landed into politics kind of accidentally.
Mm-hmm.
And I say accidentally because I thought I was a liberal my whole life. I thought I was on the left my whole life. And
As most of us do, when you grow up in the Black community, you just think you're a liberal because you're supposed to be. You vote Democrat because everybody in the neighborhood votes Democrat. And you don't even think about it. It's just like second nature. You're Black, you're poor, you vote Democrat. That's just kind of the way it is.
and really didn't pay attention to politics in any meaningful way. And then, when Trump was running for office, I didn't want him to be elected. I was like, this, not because I thought he was a racist or a sexist, but just because I thought it was crazy to go from Obama, who had a certain decorum about him, to suddenly this sort of brash New Yorker. But I thought it was weird when all of a sudden the people that liked Trump, everyone thought he was like this iconic symbol of business. He was in.
And exactly, same thing. Loved Obama, voted for Obama twice. The decorum, I hated Donald Trump. I just like, where's the decorum? Where's the etiquette? Where's the eloquence? He can't even speak right. Like, why would I even vote for him? Man, he shouldn't be in office. I always looked at my presidents as upstanding, whether it was Bill Clinton, who was getting head in the White House, decorum, whether it was Obama, who, was just such a strong looking, intelligent Harvard graduate Black man. Even though like George W. Bush was a bumbling idiot, he still was presidential when it was time to be. Herbert Walker Bush, same thing. These guys just looked like presidents. And then here comes Donald Trump, and I was like, came down that golden escalator, and I was like, there's no freaking way. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what she's talking about. So go on, Candace.
And rap songs, Trump was a status, flipped on him in 1 second. I didn't buy the narrative that he was in the media for 3-4 decades, and suddenly you wanted me to believe overnight that he was like Adolf Hitler and a rape.
And I talked about that last week, how all the rappers would rap about, want to be like Trump. I want Trump money. I want to do things like Donald Trump. I want business. I want all of that. I did a video last week. There was like 67 songs made where they mentioned Donald Trump. This guy used to be on Howard Stern on a regular basis. Him and Whoopi Goldberg was friends, and Oprah Winfrey was friends, and all of these celebrities love Donald Trump. The Apprentice was a top-rated TV show. And then all of a sudden, just like that, he came down the escalator. He's Hitler. He's the devil. He's evil. And it never stopped. Someone asked me the other day, let me let me let Candace finish, and I'll go into the story.
So I just didn't trust the media's narrative about him. And so I decided to actually listen to what he said. I still didn't vote for him in 2016, but I wanted to just listen to what he actually said. And then when I saw what he was saying versus how it was being reported, I just found it to be extremely dishonest. So I started researching more, learning more, and then I got kind of angry, like just with the lies, because I do think Black Americans are intentionally manipulated emotionally by the media, and kind of kept dumb but emotional intentionally by the school system. And I started reading up on like Thomas Sowell, Shelby Steele, a bunch of Black scholars that I originally had dismissed as Uncle Toms. And irony now is I get called an Uncle Tom all the time. So I got
Same. Uncle Tom, a guy told me tonight on Facebook, yo, you need to stop caping for the white folks. It's not a good look. I'm like, caping? Like, what do you mean? Like I'm defending them so I benefit from it? No, I actually get more hatred from doing that. I'm not caping for white folks. I'm just trying to, be a truth seeker and try and figure out what's going on and is there really, really a swamp? And the more we look at it, the more we discover a lot of swampiness in DC and amongst politicians and, especially in the Democratic Party.
what was coming, but yeah, and then I realized that actually I've always been a conservative. I just didn't know it. And economically speaking, of course, the conservative arguments make the most sense.
Is that
Yeah, and that's the same thing with me. I have a lot of conservative values. People say, what are conservative values? Smaller government, um, good family values, patriarchy, uh, all that, deregulating businesses so it's easier to grow business and build a business. All that's good stuff. Staying out of wars, not spending money on foreign interest. All of that is conservative. America first. A lot of people who vote Democrat, who consider themselves quote unquote liberal, are really conservative and they don't like the things that's going on. I don't like to say that I'm pro-life. I stay out of that. But I think most people are really pro-life. That's just what I'm thinking.
Bother you that people call you an Uncle Tom?
No, not at all. First off, because if they read the book, Uncle Tom was the hero. But also because I get it. How can I fault people for something that I would have engaged in for the majority of my life? I thought the same thing about Black conservatives. Like I thought it was this betrayal, but I never actually understood it. It was just
I hated Candace Owens for so long. I also called her an Uncle Tom and told her she was caping for the white folks and that she only did what she did. But then I realized that's not true at all.
emotional response. And I think that kind of is, if you come out of the public school system, I can't imagine how you could be a Black conservative when just the way that they even tell us our own history is just not true,
Do you think?
So yeah, she basically told my story about my own politics, the way I see the world, the way I see America. I too was exactly the same. So when I say I'm not grifting off Candace, I'm really not. I'm going to back off that, but I do want to, I show a lot of her content because she always says the right thing, and I really believe, she wants what's best for Black people, socially, politically, empowerment, self-reliance. She wants all those things, the things that we used to have when we were forced to be that way. I know Byron Donalds got in trouble for talking about during Jim Crow, but I'm gonna mimic that. I'm gonna say that during Jim Crow we were forced to be self-reliant and do things on our own and have Black businesses in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and all these places where we were just independent people, and we could be proud like Jewish communities or Asian communities who stay within their pockets and keep their wealth within their circles. All right. Asian people spend with Asian people, Jewish people spend with Jewish people, and Blacks, our money just goes all over except back into our communities. And we don't own or have any communities. And this is kind of where Candace wants us to be. So I saw her on Nick Cannon's show. It's called Council Culture, kind of a play on words with cancel culture. I don't like the show. Personally, I think Nick talks too much. When I think of good interview shows, I think if a show is 30 minutes, the interviewer probably should talk about 8 to 10 of those minutes, while the interviewee talks 20 minutes. And it seems to me that Nick likes to talk and show us, the public, how smart he is. And No, just kudos to you for having a show. We know you're a millionaire. You've done great things. America's Got Talent, Wild and Out. You have great movies. Drumline is one of my favorite movies of all time. We all know about, all the baby mamas, but that's his life. That's his business. Not very conservative, not very Republican to live your life like that, because we do believe in families and family morals and values. But all that said, he has this show, Council Culture, and he had Candace Owens. And I'm going to show you how she really, really does want the best for Black people. Here's something she was talking about LBJ.
Did this to Black America. It is a fact that in the 1950s, under Jim Crow, that Black Americans were outpacing white Americans in terms of growth. Well, what happened was, despite there being Jim Crow, or because of Jim Crow, Black Americans couldn't rely on government. There is this simple thing that when your back is against the wall, you will fight, and so then LBJ, who was the most racist president. I mean, this man was dropping the hard R-N word for breakfast every day. He hated Black Americans, and yet we learned in public school that he was our savior because he inked the Civil Rights Bill.
But he had to. That wasn't by choice.
Literally, he had a figurative gun to his head.
Yeah.
And there's more stuff that he did in terms of trying, the draft, wanting Black Americans to die first in Vietnam. He was so committed to racism, and he said, I'll have these N-words voting Democrat for the next 200 years. And in one fell swoop, signed welfareism in. And that's what broke down our families. Black America will literally say the absolute most about how bad government is while insisting that we have more government.
Yeah, and then so many Black people go, I don't like Candace. I can't stand her. I hate her because she's always talking about Black people. No. She's just trying to get us as a people to do the right things. She's trying to get us as Black people to be powerful, to, listen to Black voices that have come before us who know a better way than to say, what are you going to give me? What are you going to give me? Where's the handouts? Where's the handouts from America? What is the government going to do for me? That's and that's what I've heard all of my life, year after year. What does the government do for Black people? What is Kamala going to do for Black people? What is Trump doing for Black people? As I said in my TikTok the other day, there is no Black agenda. There is no Black agenda. All there is policies and laws and procedures and Trump's not Trump stump speeches, and they put the word Black in it and African American, and all of a sudden you think that that's for you. That's not for you. They just put Black on it to pander to you, and all you're going to do is vote for them because they said, "Oh, we got a Black plan." Like I said, I was at Home Depot the other day, right? So if there was like hardly any Black people in Home Depot because we got to buy houses. Mostly homeowners go to Home Depot, but fortunately, we have the lowest percentage of home ownership in America, so we don't need to go to Home Depot. We don't need nails and wood and lumber and tools. Come on, people. Let's figure this out. All right. And I thought, wow, why don't we just call it Black Home Depot? And then people, oh, have you been to the new Home Depot? It's the Black Home Depot. Where Blacks may shop at Walmart because, they may cater or pander to Black people. Less Black people may shop at Target. So next thing you got to have is the Black Target, Black TikTok, Black Twitter. Stupid, man. Come on. Anyway, so what happened to America? So one thing you're going to know about conservatives is that we do believe in the patriarchy. We believe in that a strong country like America is basically upheld by strong men. And it was that way for a time where John Wayne was a hero. Maybe not my hero, but I'm just using him figuratively as an example. Having fathers in the household were found to be much stronger families. Having world leaders around the world And I'm not saying personally that a woman can't be a leader. Please don't get me wrong. We're just saying that the man, and particularly the white man, but the man has been blamed for all the problems and woes in the world, especially America. And how did we get here? How did we get from a society that believed in a strong, was it this, what was that thing they used to say about Cary Grant and people like that? The strong silent type. You know, when you thought of General Patton and Dwight Eisenhower and even Frederick Douglass, if you want to name some Black people, Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and all these men that stood on podiums and changed the world. If you want to go to the framers and the founding fathers, these George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and Alexander Hamilton. These were the framers. These were the people that built America. And now men are being blamed for all the woes in the world, and everybody think that leaders need to be, you know, feminine or be expressive or in their feelings and no longer be the strong silent type, you know? So, but Judge Joe Brown broke it down. He was on a guest on the Candace Owens show. And like I said, this is the Candace Owens episode because I'm going to try and do less Candace here. But I thought I might as well just lump them all in this show and go from there. Anyway, but he touched on some certain topics, and it's a longer video, but I'm going to stop it intermittently and tell you how right he is. Okay, so what happened is this book called Chaos. I showed you the book last week, and it's about the '60s. Charles Manson, basically the elimination of the hippie. How did they eliminate the hippie? Because the hippies were anti-war during Vietnam, and there was a lot of protest in the street, and there was this whole lot going on with hippies at the time. Flower children, Woodstock, the whole nine. So the CIA got involved basically and was like, we need to get rid of these hippies. They're too liberal. They're too progressive. It goes against everything America is and should be. So we're going to eliminate the hippie. But they can't just go out and get rid of the hippie. So what they did basically was Charles Manson. And Charles Manson was actually an FBI informant. This book, Chaos, is pretty awesome. And then they talked about MK Ultra, which is, if you've seen The Manchurian Candidate, it was The Manchurian Candidate, the Denzel Washington version, explained it more, because I think when they did the original Manchurian Candidate with Frank Sinatra, we weren't as evolved in our movie making. We couldn't be as outspoken, so we had to kind of do it with code. But if you watch The Manchurian Candidate with Denzel Washington, you'll see how these military men, these soldiers, were drugged during Vietnam, made them come back to America and think they didn't see what they saw, and they couldn't remember things, and the government could manipulate them and have them doing things that they didn't even realize they were doing. And that's in this book. They're talking about MK Ultra. So this book talks all about that. So Candace is talking about this book and how slowly but surely they wanted to emasculate America. We were just too macho, I guess. And now Judge Joe Brown, he's going to get into talking about, the rainbow and LGBTQ community and how that evolved. But then it goes into how we went from the flower children, the hippies, and then we went into acceptance of, slowly but surely, the LGBT community, and it was okay, men being more expressive, boys are taught to be less violent. It's okay to be within your feelings, taking away your toy guns and your cap guns, and it's okay to play with dolls, and how a strong Black community slowly was changing due to the movies. We had Sidney Poitier and Harry Belafonte and all these great actors in Black cinema. So they gave you blaxploitation movies like The Mac and Superfly and gangsters and drugs and sex, and then that trickled down into the neighborhood. It's amazing. So I'm gonna let Judge Joe Brown do the talk, and I'll stop intermittently and see what we can find here. But just listen, and I promise I'll stop here and there. We will talk about it, and we'll end the show after this.
And so this has been going on, and I think this discussion is really important since the 60s. I've been really working hard for people to wake up about who your government is. But I'm fascinated that you say that you think it was about the war, because that really was my takeaway from that book, Chaos, was they needed the hippies generation to end, and having this big fake staged Hollywood murder that the CIA was actually involved in, and Charles Manson was a Fed, was a way to traumatize with propaganda, was to traumatize the public, the hippie communes, everyone's love, rock and roll, let's not go to war. And he basically said overnight, because of these horrific murders, people started locking their doors. They were afraid of hippies, and the music died that day. Nobody wanted anything with like peace, love, rock and roll, and LSD, because they were just all told and following this case. So we're talking about a psychological operation that was enacted on the public to create a mass psychosis. And you're virtually saying the exact same thing. What was their worry? Well, people didn't want to go to war, and they had war on the mind, and they wanted to get to war, and they couldn't have anybody who was militantly against it or peacefully against it like the hippies were.
There's another cook up too. We were talking about that rainbow thing. It's interesting how they got started. In the late mid-60s, they're going around all over the country talking about this, and it was a coalition of those who hated that they weren't men. Those were the feminists. The ones that hated men, some of the lesbians. The ones that hated that they weren't normal men, that were some of the gays. The ones that hated that they weren't strong men, the soy boys, so to speak. And then the big chunk was this other, hey man, war is a man thing, man. You know, it's all about love, man. We got to have love power, man, flower power. Men are about war. You have to change the way men are raised from boys so they're more into expressing themselves. So you got this thing there that had the overwhelming ballast. And that is the impetus for what led us to where we are now. And this was an important thing. It was an anti-man thing that developed because of this perception that men are responsible for war.
I had to stop that right there. So do you see what happened? America went through this transition. World War II, a lot of Americans died, a lot of breakdown of the economy, the rebuilding of the economy. Right after that, the Korean War. And then we had Vietnam, which was a total debacle. And people started to look at who's responsible for all this. And they pointed the finger and they were like, you, the men, are responsible for war. So what we need to do is we need to demasculate or emasculate men, because men right now are too war hungry. They're warmongers. And so he broke it down just now, how you went through flower power and hey dude and LSD and peace, love, and men being in your feelings and emotions. That's not what you saw in the movies, man. You saw men, cowboys, strong, war movies. I remember loving World War II movies and Charlton Heston and Clint Eastwood and, like I said, George C. Scott as General Patton and on and on, even PT 109 with about JFK and cowboys and Native Americans. I have to say that. You see what I'm saying? And then all of a sudden it was like, yo, man, flower power, dude. Peace, love, protest the war. That's where he's getting at. Joe, get him.
Forget about the fact that we've got a large component of the military now, and some striving to be in combat arms that are female. But it was perceived to be a man thing, so no.
So yeah, I was in the Navy. When I was in the Navy, women could join the Navy, but there were all, ships were all men. It was all dudes. So we could be sexist, misogynistic. We could be whatever we want. We could talk about girls. We couldn't wait to get to port so we could hang out with the ladies and the porter calls. And, it was like, and then the women in the Navy, they had their own ships. They could be on refrigeration ships, supply ships, things like that. But some of the combat ships, it was just the guys. Okay. And then when I got out, I heard that women were going to combat ships and the whole thing was changing. So now they had unisex ships but look at the problems it caused. It caused a lot of sexual harassment and DEI and problems, just problems after problems, because now men had to share a space that was once men only. I kind of feel sorry for the guys who had been in the Navy. Like I got out, but imagine the guys who had been in the Navy during that transition and they had been in 10, 15, 20 years. Like I got out after my 10th year, but what if I had stayed in another 10? Then I would have witnessed all that. But my first 10 would have been all male, ships until I went into the shore duty. So very interesting transition went on, very interesting dynamic and paradigm shift for a lot of people in the military, including the Army and the Marines, where a lot of the women started carrying assault rifles and guns and tossing grenades.
No war toys, no cap guns, no water pistols. Boys and girls had unisex child clothing, child rearing. Boys are supposed to be able to emote, to cry, to shout, to let it all hang out instead of being so uptight and under self-control. And the worst thing you want is the apex predator on the planet Earth to be out of control, which is exactly what they were setting up. And this thing came together and it juxtaposed itself in a situation where Hollywood's movie studios were going bankrupt in the face of color television.
So you hear how he said they started taking guns, the toy guns out of boys' hands. They started taking cap guns, the Cowboys and Indian games. I had my holster with my six bullet revolvers in my hip, leather vest. I was the sheriff, cops and robbers. These are the games we played in the 70s. No more of that. And then it just all culminated into this slow morphing of everybody being the same, boys and girls being the same. So you can express who you were feeling. Like you didn't try to suppress them. If you were a boy who felt like a girl, you didn't have to suppress them anymore. If you were a girl who felt like a boy, you no longer had to suppress that anymore. It was just like, be you. And he's talking about this slow transition. Now he's about to talk about Hollywood and how Hollywood played its part in this transition of America.
A color TV up until the mid-60s, the screen looked just like this table. It was round and no bigger than that. And then they got square when the technology improved. So people were staying at home watching their color TVs. 1967, if you were an adult, you'd pay 50 cents to get in a movie, and you got 2 movies, and they changed every Thursday and Sunday, no matter how well they did. You got 3 cartoons and a couple of sub-features. Walk in anytime you wanted, stay as long as you wanted. So then somebody came up with the bright idea, let's just have 1 movie at a time, keep it playing as long as people will come. Let's go get the black markets. The minority markets, they want to see themselves. That's a massive amount of money out there. Let's start using the opportunity to spread dysfunction through glorification of it. We don't want Sidney Poitier playing a part where he's trying to be this and that. Let's get Fred the Hammer Williams to play a drug dealer like Black Caesar, so you glorify being a pimp, a hoe, and we'll come back to that in a bit. A gangster, drug dealer.
And when I used to go to the theater back in those days, just like he's saying, you would go to the local neighborhood theaters. To go downtown to what they call the first run theaters, that's where the movie first came out, starting on Tuesday, whatever, the movie came out. And I would go to these first run theaters, and those are the big movies. But then in our neighborhood, we got second run movies, or we got the movies they fed us, the Mac, Foxy Brown, Superfly, all the black pimp and horror movies, and the heroin addictions and the drug using, and those are the movies that we saw in our neighborhood. And if it wasn't that, it was martial arts. So Bruce Lee was really, really big in our community. Very, very rarely did we get to see a movie that was uplifting. We saw pimp movies, we saw fighting movies like martial arts, and we saw slave movies. Anything that had to do with yassa massa, yassa, you know, we saw movies like that. And because that was kind of keeping us in our lane, keeping us subservient, and then not only wanting to emulate pimps and hookers and drug users and drug sellers. So that's what they played in the black neighborhood theaters.
A murderer, a thief, and you got
Crime.
Foxy Brown with Pam Grier, and there was this whole thing where they'd have the obligatory naked, nude scenes in the whole thing. And the plot would be somebody got killed by somebody's drug dealers, and then so they wanted the revenge, and then they wanted to become drug dealers, and then you got Superfly and all of that nonsense, and you got glorification of dysfunction. And the theory that I heard was that young black men are supposed to be the epitome of masculinity, so let's effeminize them, and then you can effeminize the whole public, because the young white guys will try to copy the young black guys, and if you effeminize the young black guys, you get everybody in this mess. And then that led to what they did with the rap genre, which has been
So yeah, so those movies, those black exploitation movies, they were really, really popular in the 70s. Right? The pimps, the hoes, the drugs, okay, the gangsters, the murderers, the knife stabbers, all the crime, the black on black crime. That was in the movie, and they glorified it. And people will walk around and go, "Hey man," this was kids. I remember because I did it. "Hey man, I'm a pimp. Bitch better have my money." That's what kids wanted to play those roles. But then what happened in 79 and 80 and 81 and 82? Rap music came. The black exploitation movies were gone. They were going away. They were only used as black backdrops. If you remember, The Chronic, Dr. Dre, and Snoop Doggy Style, used those movies as snippets in the record. Remember? You remember? There was all types of pimp movies and black exploitation sounds on their albums. Crazy, right? So it was a slow transition where we're going to take it from the screen, and then we're going to put it on records. And now the kids can hear it on the radio. They can play it in their cars, and now they can want to emulate that. And then that leads into the whole crack epidemic, the degradation and breakdown of the black community. So this is all a design, and it's masterminded. It's discussed. How do we break it down to where the black community is dependent on government because they can't get out their own way? Because we have fed them media, music, movies, news, and we told them they must be Democrats. And that's who keeps feeding you.
been stagnant for 45 years. I mean, it's gotten more profane because the young white guys will try to
Check.
copy the young black guys. And if you effeminize the young black guys, you get everybody in this mess. And then that led to what they did with the rap genre, which has been stagnant for 45 years. I mean, it's gotten more profane, but it hasn't changed.
But also, it's exceedingly homosexual. I mean, everyone's gay.
Yes, it is. And the other thing is, it's not very masculine because some of the mal-informed feminists say it's this sexual fantasy. That's not what you're looking at when you're looking at the half-naked bimbos bouncing on stage behind the rap artist in the gangster hip-hop rap video. That's not his girlfriend. That's his mama, grandmama, and their friend girls and their favorite aunts. So they ideate on feminist stuff like who's going to take care of me, and I got women I live of. I'm not a producer, I'm not a protector, and you got this whole downhill spiral, which is leading us to where we are right now, where there's no duty, honor, accountability, responsibility, bravery, courage. There's no guilt, no shame to keep you self-corrected and self-focused. You're not interested in making where you live a better, safer, more secure place filled with economic prosperity, sense of purpose, morality, and ethics, and you're not dedicating yourself to being a man or a woman of public peace, dignity, and order. You just let it all go to hell. And you try to destroy all human character building things because anything counts. Because if you have character, and let's say you're a man, that means if you happen to be on the Titanic and it goes down, you say, ma'am, you and your child may have my seat on a lifeboat. I'll drown in the freezing waters. What happens is you say, I've got on a dress too, so get out of the way. That's my seat.
So yeah, and that was I've never heard it broken down like that. Judge Joe Brown can be my daddy, because I'm telling you, he broke it down how it was a slow transition that went from the 1960s through the 70s, through the 80s, the 90s, 2000s, and the 2020s. We have just, now it's full mass. But guess what's happening? A lot of Black people are starting to look at this and hear that and say, we gotta turn this around. We can turn this around. And one way to turn it around is to reject liberal policies, to reject pandering. If you want to be a Democrat, be a smart one. That's all I'm saying. It's not really about the party. It's about what the party is saying. Don't buy into anything where it's a program to make you feel like you need to do a certain thing because of your color, because of your background, because of your ethnicity, right? So yeah, that's all I really wanted to talk about today. I wanted to talk about, the emasculation of and breakdown of the patriarchy, as well as the Black community, and how we need the patriarchy back in the Black community. Gone are the days where in the 80s and 90s, we saw guys on football games saying, hi, mom, and there was no hi, dad, right? We want to see more of our superstar athletes having two parents. The people that we look up to are their role models, are role models, then we can look at them. I think that's the way it's going to swing, where single mama should be a thing of the past. It's a slow process, but we just have to get out of the whole mindset that we've been brainwashed and believed to be normal. Now, I'm guilty. I was caught up in that too. My girlfriend had kids. I went off into the military. I said, they'll be fine. So even today, I have adult children who I'm trying to build a relationship now, but I wasn't there a lot of their childhood because I just felt, they're with their aunts and uncles in the neighborhood. That they'll take care of them, and I just visited or sent money home. But that's the way I was programmed to think that, you know what, everybody in the hood's like that. So it's totally normal. When you hear guys like Cam Newton say, I got 7, 8 children and 7, 8 baby mamas. When you hear Nick Cannon say, I got, 13 children and 8 baby mamas, is because they were programmed and conditioned to think that was okay. It's not okay. That's all I got. See you guys on the next Be Wise podcast. And I always end with peace.